Hello and welcome to not Voices of the Prophets, Genesis, the Language of Creation, class number 10. Voices of the Prophets is our Sunday series on Ovadia that we're in a very exciting part about, and maybe we'll connect it to what we say tonight, but very, very peripherally, if anything at all. Welcome to the class. I'm Rabbi Rafi Mallet, everybody's Rebbe. We have in the studio with us Colin Martin, Avigail, Trey Bishop, Lisa, and Mayan. And we have in the YouTube comments, Tim Flanagan has chimed in so far. It says there are 4 people watching on YouTube, 5 people in the studio. That's great. Tim McMullen, Shalom to Rafi and all here in the class. So we've got 2 Tims. 2 Tims. Okay. So we have 2 on the 6 watching on YouTube, 2 of whom have made a comment, 5 in the studio. And I'll give my usual spiel for those watching on YouTube or whatever it may be. Like the video, share the video, consider joining as a channel member if you haven't done so already. If you'd like to make a more meaningful donation to the channel, go ahead and do so using the links below. Shop at artscroll.com/Rebbe Rafi, REBBIRAFI, my affiliate link, so that I earn a commission from any purchases you make. And dedications, I'd like to once again thank Colin for a generous contribution to the channel, and an anonymous donor who once again shared this message with deepest thanks and appreciation for all you do to spread the light of Judaism and for all you do for the Noahide community. And those are those dedications. I don't remember if I'm leaving anything out, but we also have B'nai Noach, Hearts for Hashem, Shalom, Rabbi. Without further ado, we can go ahead and start the class. Any questions or comments before I begin? Please feel free to interrupt at any time. Let's take a look at the text. Okay. So last week we did, I think, verses, I don't remember which verses we did, but I know we finished verse 8, which was the rakia, talking about the rakia, the firmament, as it were. You can go back to the previous class for that. And we are now on verse 9, which is, now we're up to day 3, right? We finished the 2nd day, and now we're beginning the 3rd day of creation, which reads as follows. It says, Vayomer Elohim, which by now we all know means, and God said. He had that a number of times. What did he say? Here's where it gets tricky. It says, Yikavu hamayim. Now, oopsies, I didn't mean to scroll there. Pardon me. Yikavu hamayim. Now, the easy part of that is the word hamayim. And the word hamayim, by now everybody knows, means the water. This here is a verb, and it's saying the water should do this verb. Now, let's take a look closely and break down what this verb is and what's going on here. So the first thing you might notice is the yud in the beginning, okay, that yud prefix in the beginning. And what we learned prior is that the yud prefix in the beginning of before a shoresh, right, in the beginning of a verb, points to the 3rd person future tense, as in he will or it will, masculine. But here there's a difference, and the difference here is that the shoresh, which we'll point out in the middle, we'll point out. I was going to say in a minute, we'll point it out now. Here's the shoresh. It's the kuf and the vav. Now we know a shoresh should have 3 letters, and we'll talk about the 3rd letter in a moment. But here's the shoresh, and then at the end we have a suffix u. Okay, it's the letter vav with a dot in the center, which is a u vowel. It's called a shuruk. So now I want you to pay attention to this new rule that I'm going to share with you. And in this series, you're responsible for taking your own notes. Okay, so take notes that when you have a shoresh that is sandwiched by yud in the beginning and u at the end, the yud u, okay, that is 3rd person future masculine plural. Okay, so the only thing that we've changed from what we had before when there was a yud in the beginning, the yud in the beginning before was third person, future tense, masculine, singular. But when I add that oo at the end, that makes it plural. So in other words, it would be he, not he will, but they will. Okay. They will rather than he will. So like where's some examples we had before the yud? Like yehi, I think we had. Like over here, yehi, which was yud with this shorsh, hey yud, like to be. So yehi, it shall be. There shall be a rakia, there shall be a firmament, yehi, or there shall be light, etc. So now, in addition to the yud prefix, we have this u suffix, which makes it rather than he will, they will. So why is it they will? Because mayim, water, as we discussed before, is a plural noun, waters. In Hebrew, water is always plural, waters. So it's telling you what the waters will do. And since it's plural, it's they will. Yikavu hamayim, the waters will, what will the waters do? This shoresh, kuf vav. Now, what's cute is that you can see on the Safari immediately when I highlight the kuf vav, it thinks it's the word kav. And the word kav, it says, means cord, line, measuring line, okay? But that's not quite what it means as a verb. So here we'll go to, I'll go to my Google Doc of the notes, and I'll show you some notes. Okay, so here's our notes, yada, 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 yada. Okay, let's make a new note over here. This is the shoresh. It is kuf, vav, hey. Okay, kuf, vav, hey. I hope that's visible to everybody. So kuf, vav, hey. However you want to pronounce that, kava, kiva, kavo, kave. There's no vowels. It's just 3 letters. It means, anyone know before I tell you? Anyone know what that shoresh means? Now, you may gather from the context and the verse, and we all know like these verses in Genesis, and God said, the waters shall do this. Now, usually the verb there is gather, right? The waters shall be gathered. And actually it is another good point here. It's not that the waters shall gather, but the waters shall be gathered. It's a I guess it would be called a passive verb, that it's happening to the water rather than the waters doing it. If the waters were doing it, the vowel underneath the yud, rather than being the chirik, the e sound, yikavu, it would be a shiva, which is like we had in the word yehi, like yehi rather. Over here, like this yud has those 2 vertical dots underneath. That's called the shiva. That indicates the active form, that yehi rakia, the rakia shall be. But here, yikavu is not that the waters should do something, but something should happen to the waters. That has an E vowel that makes it passive. So yikavu hamayim means the waters shall be gathered. Okay, gathered. The waters shall be gathered. Now, before I go any further, so what we've established now is that this shoresh, here, this shoresh, kuf vav hey, is a shoresh meaning to gather. What word do you know, or might you be familiar with, in Hebrew that has this root, aside from what we're looking at in the verse? Another Hebrew word you might know. Now, you remember when I highlighted this, so the Safaria showed us the word kav. Many of you may know the word kav. The word kav means, like it says here, a chord or a line. Very, I would say in modern Hebrew, kav means like a line, like a straight line. You draw a line, kav, okay? The word kav is very clearly from the same root as to gather. The question is why? What does a cord or a line have to do with gathering? And in addition to that, there's a very famous word in Hebrew that has the shoresh. And when I say it, you're going to go, oh, of course. The word tikva. Is anyone familiar with the word tikva? What does the word tikva mean?
Hope.
Hope. Everyone knows the word tikva, very famous word. The Israeli national anthem is Hatikva, the hope. It's a song about the hope of the Jewish people to return to their homeland after 2,000 years in exile. So now I would say this. The connection between tikva and kav, which means tikva meaning hope, and kav, which means a line or a cord, is much easier to establish. Now, if I would ask you conceptually, draw together a connection between the word tikva, meaning hope, and the word kav, meaning a line. Or a cord. So, yeah.
I can only sort of see that it's twisted together, like it's in unity. And the hope is not just an individual hoping, but it's the Jewish people as a whole are bound together in their hoping.
That's very interesting. That's what you want to say. Hope is like you hope together. You're not alone in your hope. Okay, I would say, I feel that's a bit of a stretch, but what I really like that you said is that a line or a cord or a rope is twisted together. And that definitely goes with the verb form of to be gathered, because you're twisting it and meshing it together. You're taking disparate threads and but also when you do that, what do? You strengthen the connection. So to hope for something means to hold on to a connection. You hold on to hope. The hope is your rope that you hold on to not let go of something. You hold on to hope. It's the cord. It's the lifeline. You know, you talk about throw me a lifeline. A guy's drowning in the sea, and you throw him a lifeline. You throw him a rope, a cord, kav. So kav meaning hope means it's a lifeline. It's a cord. It's a rope that you're holding on to. Just like the individual threads of a rope are twisted together to hold tightly to become one. And that's like the gathering, the hope, the cord. Now, I was thinking also just a straight line being a kav could be just the fact that it's gathered together, meaning a straight line is like a very, very thin, like we say, a thin cord. It's something that's pressed together very tightly as a singular filament, a singular piece. So that, I believe, is the conceptual connection between the line and the cord and the hope and the gathering. Now, just to add to that, the word tikva is used in the Tanach literally as a cord. The word tikva means a cord. Where do we have that? We have that in the book of Judges. Let's look at that right now. Not Judges, sorry. Joshua. If we go to the book of Joshua, chapter 2, okay, what happens in Joshua chapter 2? Joshua sends spies ahead into the city of Jericho, and they go to a woman named Rachav. They go to her house of ill repute, which seemed they felt was a great place to spy, because all types of visitors from all over Canaan would be going there, and they'd be able to gather some juicy gossip. And also that Rachav herself, having received visitors from everywhere, knew what was going on all over the land. So if they wanted to get a quick lowdown on everything that was happening, she was the woman to go to. And the king of Jericho discovers them. He sends officers to arrest them. Rachav hides them, and then she lets them out through her window. outside the wall of the city. She had a window into the wall of the city, so she could let them directly outside the city, even though the city gates had been locked. And she lets them out. How does she let them out? How do they get down from the window? Who remembers?
A red cord.
A
Or a
red
cord.
cord, a scarlet cord. Anyone can guess the Hebrew word for the cord?
Tikva.
Tikva, that's right. So let's look at that right now. Okay. Okay, now here actually it says chevel. Chevel means a rope, okay? But there's a, for sure, so I should have looked it up before, but I for sure remember that it says tikvat chut hashani. See if I could find it. Tikvat chut hashani. Where does it say that? Here. In verse, so just to be transparent, right? In verse 14, it says she let them down with a chevel, a rope. But in verse, it says, behold, we are coming to the land. Et tikvat chut hashani hazeh. This tikvat chut hashani. Now, tikvat is the word tikva, which I said means a cord. And the taf at the end is the construct form, the cord of chut hashani. Chut is a thread. Shani means scarlet. The cord of the scarlet thread, hazeh, this cord of scarlet thread, tiksheri bachalon, tied to the window, asher horadtenu vo, that you've let us down through it, okay, and so on and so forth. But here it's called tikvat chut hashani, the cord of the scarlet thread. Okay, so there you have tikva as a cord. Okay, so let's get back to our verse. Let's get back to our verse. Genesis chapter 1, verse 9. Okay, so ikavu hamayim, the waters shall be gathered together, drawn together, brought together as one. Similar to the way that we find the word, the shoresh kava, being used in other places to mean something that's sort of unified together as one, like a cord, which is also something holds on to remain connected. So the yikavu hamayim, the waters shall be gathered. And was that you can still see the text up there, right? It's a little annoying that it keeps moving it over, but the water shall be gathered. I can't stop it from doing that. Mitachat hashamayim. Okay. Now I think we had the word mitachat before, didn't we? Yeah, right here in verse 7, where he said, and God made the rakia, and he divided between the water that was mitachat la rakia. What's mitachat? Who remembers?
Like under or beneath?
Under or beneath. So the waters shall gather mitachat hashamayim, under the shamayim, under the heavens. The waters shall be gathered under the heavens. El makom echad. So what's the word el? Ignore what it says on the sidebar of Safaria. What does the word el mean?
Like upon?
Well, that would be al with an ayin.
Oh, gotcha.
El with an aleph means something different. I know Abigail knows, but she's giving someone else a chance. I'm trying to remember if we had it before in the text yet. We may not have. Looks like we did not. So the word el, two. Take notes. The word el means two. Okay. So, and God said, the waters shall be gathered under the heavens to makom echad. The word makom, as you can see on the side here, means a place. Okay. Place. And echad, of course, as we saw before, means one. Makom echad, one place. The waters shall be gathered under the heavens to one place. Okay, so far so good. The next words are ותראה היבשה. So let's take a look at ותראה. As the Sefaria points out, תראה is from the shorish ra'ah, which means to see. Now vav is and, right? And then we have a prefix taf. Prefix taf. ותראה. What is the prefix taf? The prefix taf, not sure we had it before. Did we have it before, prefix taf? All right, while I look, you'll tell me if you remember it. Could be we haven't had it yet. Okay, so prefix taf doesn't look like we had it. Okay, can mean a number of things. Like the yud prefix, it often indicates a future tense, but it could mean future tense second person, like you. It could also mean future tense third person female, she. And she can also mean it, female, feminine. So from the context, we'll see that it's talking about not a person, she, but an, if you will, a thing, it. And it shall be seen. Now, again, this is the passive form. If it would be the active form, it would be ותראה, and that would mean, and it will see. ותראה is, and it will be seen. Okay, so the water shall be gathered to one place, and it will be seen. The it is not the water. How do I know the it is not the water?
Because it's female.
It's feminine and it's also singular. Whereas the water we see is masculine plural because the yud and the u, aside from the fact that mayim, right, plural. So it's talking about something else. Something will be seen. What will be seen? Let's look at the next word. Hayabasha. So here you see on the sidebar here, Safari tells us that yabasha means dry land. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The hey here is the definite article. Okay, so the yabasha, the dry land, will be seen. And God said, the waters shall be gathered under the heavens to one place, and the dry land shall be seen. Now, I just want to analyze the word yabasha. It's interesting, yeah. It tells you the yabasha is from the letters yud bet shin, okay, yud bet shin, which is a shoresh meaning to make dry, to be dry, has to do with something that's dry. So the yabasha is something dry. So the dry thing will be seen. What dry thing is it? Turns out it's the dry land. Now, here you see in the Sefaria, it says yavesh, which is masculine. Here, yabasha is feminine. How do we know it's feminine? Who remembers?
It's got the hay.
It ends with not just hay, but kamatz hay. Okay, kamatz hay. That is the hay, but the letter prior to the hay has the kamatz vowel, the a. Okay, yabasha. So it's a feminine dry thing. Now, while it's not explicit what that is, this noun yabasha refers to dry land, whereas a yavesh would refer to dry something, but not something specific. We mentioned before how land and things associated with land are usually feminine. So the yabasha, the dry feminine thing, by implication here, is the dry land. Okay, now if it was just an adjective, it would be yivesha, and that would mean the dry feminine thing, and we wouldn't know what that feminine thing is. Here it's in a noun form, yabasha. It's a feminine noun that is dry, and you just need to know that it refers to the dry land. A yabasha is dry land. Okay, so and the dry land will be seen. And God said, the waters shall be gathered under the heavens to one place, and the dry land will be seen. Okay, now I think the text is obscured there, so let me just scroll up so you can see past my head. It says Vayhi Chen. Now Vayhi Chen we had previously in verse 7, right? Where it said God made the rakia and it divided between the water that was below the rakia and the water that was above the rakia. Vayhi Chen. Who remembers what Vayhi Chen meant?
And it was so.
And it was so, right? Vayhi, and it was. Cain, we said, means so, as in like firmly established. Okay, we talked a lot about that, and I think it was in the last class. So refer to that, and we have it again here. Vayhi Chen, and it was so. And God said, let the waters be gathered under the heavens to one place, and the dry land shall be seen, and it was so. Okay. Any questions on that? Any questions on that?
I've just got a question about kaveh. On
Yeah.
Shabbos morning, the kaveh el Hashem,
Mm-hmm.
that's hope in Hashem, isn't it? Not gather to Hashem.
Oh, very good. My understanding, Kaveh el Hashem, hope to God. Yeah. Kaveh el Hashem, hope to God. But the word here, you know what? You'll see in verse 10 a word that you're very familiar with, or I think most students of Judaism are familiar with. This word over here, mikveh, right? Mikveh. People are very familiar with the concept of the mikveh as it pertains to the so-called ritual waters, ritualarium, or really means a pool of water. Because what is a pool? A pool means something that is gathered together, is a pool, pooling your money, etc. So really, you could say here, the waters shall pool, okay? And then we get mikveh, a pool or a gathering of water, okay? And that's the idea of the mikveh mayim. We have in the Navi, in the prophets, I don't remember where this verse is, somebody might remember better than me, where actually it says that God is the mikveh Yisrael. Mikveh Yisrael Hashem. The mikveh of Israel is God. And what does that mean? Does it mean, it could mean a lot of things. It could mean God is the hope of Israel. It could mean God is the mikveh of Israel, as in the one who purifies Israel like the ritual pool. It could mean God is the one who gathers Israel together. Mikveh Yisrael Hashem. So I'm just pointing out all these words
Rabbi,
are related.
Could it also have the sort of meaning that Hashem is the one in whom you should immerse yourself? Can it have that sort of connotation?
Perhaps, but I think like homiletically, yeah, because again, a mikveh doesn't mean immersion. The word for immersion is tivilah, really, litbol, lihitavel. But you're correct that the pool of water is where we do immerse, so it could imply that God should be the one in whom we immerse. But until and unless we're examining that verse, I don't want to say more because I don't want to misrepresent without context, but I only mean to point out here that we have related words. We have this verb of gathering or pooling of water, which is the shorish of it is the same shorish as I lost the text, as a rope or a cord, and also hope. I tried to kind of conceptually explain why those words are connected. Okay, any questions on this verse in general? Okay, if not, I'm gonna continue. But there really is quite a lot here. But maybe we'll just, if no one is bursting with curiosity, maybe we'll just make some progress in the text. Okay, So stop me if you have a question.
Although,
Verse
Rabbi, is there something you think we should be asking that we're missing?
I mean, what strikes me is, okay, the waters gathered to one place and the dry land was seen. The classic questions on it: the water gathered to one place. Is it so? I mean, again, a spoiler alert. We're gonna say in verse number 10, which we're about to read, that God called the gathering of water seas, seas, which is plural, right? So were the waters gathered in one place, or were they gathered in multiple places? So what gives? The dry land was seen, but we never established, or did we? That's a question. Did we ever establish the creation of land? We just, the water is there. The water moves. Land appears. Where did the water come from? Where did the land come from? Right? We divided the waters in the previous day. Where do we find the creation of the water? It says in the land was, so we had the land, we had Aretz. We didn't have Yabasha, but we're going to see in the next verse that God calls Yabasha Eretz, and that opens a whole other can of worms. What do you mean he called it Eretz? We already had Eretz prior to this, but that is the same question as when God calls the Rakia Shamayim, and whatever we answered for there applies here. But we had, God created the Aretz. The Aretz was tohu and bohu, right? And then there was darkness over the face of the deep. The Spirit of God hovered over the water. So there was water. The water was divided. Now the water was moved and land appeared. So just the curiosity of where did the land come from? Maybe it's not such a curiosity. Now we'll say, okay, the land was there in the first day. And it was covered in water. God made all that, the water with the land on the first day, but it was all kind of mixed together. And that's why it was tohu and bohu. And then God starts, he starts organizing things. He starts particulating things. He divides the waters and he creates the atmosphere. And now he moves the waters and the land is seen. The land was there from before. Maybe it's not so mysterious, but I'm just pointing out, usually it's a question that comes up doesn't say he makes the land. It just says the waters are gathered and the land appears. I think there's a lot of questions that could be asked here, but if you're not curious about it, it doesn't need to be a problem. I'm not here to make problems. I'm not trying to be a problematic person and make problems. If you don't see a problem, it doesn't need to be a problem. I'm just offering that typically people have questions. It's okay. We don't need to stop for every detail. But I'll let that be. If someone wants, my point is, you want to stop and ask a question, you're invited to do so. Meanwhile, I'll move on to verse 10, but you can stop me at any time. Okay, so now it says as follows: Vayikra Elohim layabasha eretz. So to start off, right? Vayikra Elohim. We had before. What is that?
God called
layabasha.
the dry land.
The dry land. Now, notice we have the lamed prefix, which we said means to. He called to the dry land. But as we explained before, it's not like he was calling out to it, hey, dry land. But he was conferring upon it, as we're going to say, as we're going to see and say, a title like we had prior. We had the same exact language. Vaikra Elohim la rakia shamayim. God called to the rakia heavens, right? Meaning he called the rakia heavens. It's just sort of like idiomatically in Hebrew, it's described as calling to it, but it means conferring upon it. And like Avigal pointed out, the verb to call means not only what we say in English, like you call to someone, but also you call a name. So he calls to the rakia, but we would say in English, he calls the rakia shamayim, he calls it heavens. And we had it also by the light and the darkness. Vayikra Elohim la oriyom. God calls to the light, day. He confers upon the light the name or the title, day. V'la choshech, and to the darkness, kara laila. He called night. He conferred upon it the title night. So we had that by light and darkness. We had it by the rakia, and now we have it here by the dry land. It's that God called la yabasha. So we'd say in English, he called the dry land. What did he call it? Eretz. What's Eretz? Like we had before, land or earth. He called the dry land, land, earth. Okay, that part's pretty clear. And here we have ul mikvei hamayim. Okay, so vav prefix and, lamed prefix to, mikvei from the shoresh kuf vav hey, to gather, right? He called the mikvei hamayim, the gathering of the water, kara yamim. He called yamim. Yamim, seas. The word yam means a sea. You have the im suffix, which indicates plural. So, yamim, seas. To the gathering of water, he called seas. Vayar Elohim ki tov. And what's this?
Elohim saw.
And God saw ki tov. We had this.
It was good.
Before. What? Say again?
That it was good.
That it was good. So ki can mean that. And we also offer that it could mean because. And as we pointed out in the language of according to the Ramban, he says that God seeing means that God granted it permanence. Ki tov, because it was tov, meaning because it had achieved the desired form. Okay, we had at first formless, and God is directing creation to move in the direction of a more developed world, a world that is more prepared for mankind. And so when the waters rather are moved in such a way that now there is land, now there is dry land, now there is a place for mankind to inhabit, that is the correct form for the water. It is not the correct final form for the water to be covering the land such that man cannot inhabit the earth. But when the waters move aside such that the land is revealed and becomes a habitation for man, that is tov, that is the desired form. And so God sees it, meaning he grants it permanence in its current state because it is tov, it is now good, it is now in its desired finished form, as it were. Okay, and that's what we had with the light. Now, okay, before I say anything else, that's the translation. Questions? I already gave you a question.
I have a question.
Please.
So, in going back and reading the prior and then reading this, was the earth submerged?
What do you say?
I mean, by reading, I would say yes.
Okay. Sounds like the earth
submerged in
was
water?
submerged and it was uncovered. You have a follow-up to that?
I can get in my Humash and read Rashi.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm asking you, what do you think, not what Rashi thinks?
Well, I mean, just by Let me go back and reread it again. Let the waters be gathered beneath the heavens onto one area, and let appear the dry land, and it was so. So, but it doesn't say that it was separated. It was. I can't really. It's just a thought that by what it's saying to me on this last part was, hold on, and God called the dry land earth. I mean, that's when he names it. Not, it doesn't get named until you have to pardon me, Rabbi Mallet. I'm not good at putting my words.
So why don't you think about it? And if you're asking a question, when you feel you know what you're asking, then please ask so that I can respond. Okay?
Okay. Yes.
Rabbi, I've got two thoughts on how I'm imagining it might be. The first thing that came to my head was really the same idea, that because here and now we see that there is land underneath the oceans. So you kind of think, okay, it was always there and it just kind of got moved around up and down. But then I also had the thought maybe the original waters contained all the sand and dirt and so on, like we would see now in turbulent waters, where it's all mushed up together and it's all turbid and you can't see through it because it's murky. So I'm thinking maybe it was like that. And then the water, for want of a better word, got purified when all the dirt particles got pulled out of it and drawn into one place to make land, and the clean water was drawn into one place to make seas. And I'm looking at the word seas, that it could still be one body of water because waters can be one body of water and it's a plural. It's just my thoughts.
Okay, you're saying profound things, and I think what you're saying connects to what Lisa was saying. Even if Lisa wasn't sure how to articulate herself, I think you're addressing a lot of what she's saying. And in fact, both of you are connecting to things that the commentaries say. I don't want to say I'm gonna blow your mind a little bit, but I'm gonna surprise you right now. I'm gonna give you an aha moment. Okay. According to some of the commentaries, there are two distinct commands in this verse. Okay, let's go back to verse 9. Okay, one is the waters shall be gathered. The second one is the dry land shall be seen. Now, at first glance, superficially, we think of this as one. The waters will be gathered, and as a result, the land will be seen. And that's like, oh, the land was submerged, and the water moves aside, and now the land will be seen. Did God really need to command that the land should be seen? If the waters are gathered, the land will be seen, right? No. The waters shall be gathered is one, and the land shall be seen is two. That means that the water and the earth were mixed together. And the Ramban says what I'm telling you now. And that's why it says in the beginning that it says that the darkness was over the face of the Tehom, the deep. The Tehom, Ramban says, the deep is, rather than saying water, this was a mixture of water and earth. Water and earth were mixed together. And at this stage, God commands the waters shall gather, means the waters shall separate themselves. You see, there's a process of separation going on throughout the creation narrative. Light is separated from dark. Upper water is separated from the lower water. And now the water itself is separated from the earthly particles within it. That the substance of the water was murky, like you're saying. It was a mixture of earth and water. And now the water should separate itself from the earth such that now the earth is distinct, and that's ikavu hamayim. And then ותראה היבשה is now this earth should emerge from the water as a separate body, and it should dry off, it should shed its water so that it becomes habitable. So there's two commands here. You see, I think that's a big aha moment. There are two commands here. So there's that's what's going. I think that addresses maybe what Lisa's asking. Was the water just submerged and it was revealed, or are we talking about water and earth separating from one another? And that is a suggestion that some of the commentaries make, and that's based on the two phrases: the waters shall be gathered together, and also the dry land shall be seen. Two different things, because you can have the water and earth separate and distinct, and the water could still be above the earth, but then the earth emerges. So that would also answer the question of how you have the water separating to one place and yet being multiple seas, is because there were two stages. Stage one, the water becomes distinct from the earth, so the water is all together and the earth is separate, and that's makom echad. The water gathers to one place. Then ותראה היבשה, the dry land becomes seen, and so you have land masses emerging from the water in multiple places, although it doesn't tell us that plural, but landmass emerges from the water, and that landmass, sort of resultantly cuts the mass of water into different bodies of water, which become seas, okay? But the mikveh hamayim is then not referring to that all the water was in one place, but rather all the water had gathered and separated from the earth that was mixed with it. Okay, does that make sense?
I'll say, aha.
Aha, it's an aha moment. Okay, now it could mean
Absolutely.
more than, there's a lot of meaning here. Now, here's a comment. Liz, like when he separated the darkness and the light, light is day, dark is night, water is sea, and land is earth. Okay, so we compare the different stages of separation. However, I mean, there's so many questions to ask and so many deep answers to give, but I'm not necessarily going to go where you don't take me, because like I said, the purpose here is, how do we translate the words? Then if you need clarity, I'll give it to you, but otherwise we'll be here forever. We'll spend an hour on each word. But I want to respond to this comment. Light is day, water is earth. Light is day, dark is night, water is sea, land is earth. Why is God renaming things? I'm sure we said something about it previously. I don't remember anymore because it happened a few times. But it's just, there's so much depth here. But
I have a question. Can
you
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I hope I'm not wasting time with this, but so I wonder if we're trying too hard to attach concrete some concrete things to what's being said here, and as opposed to maybe that's, as you've said before, I think it's not a science lesson, and like Earth, for example, or Aretz, when we say Haaretz in this chapter, are we trying too hard to look at it as Earth like we think of it, as opposed to, maybe that's not what the author is, maybe he's saying something more, I don't want to say spiritual, but some higher concept.
I would say this.
I mean, we're talking about,
certainly there are higher spiritual concepts being described here. However, there's also a plain meaning, and the plain meaning is as regards to the earth and the water that we experience in our day-to-day lives. And as far as science, in other words, for sure the text is describing what happened to the earth and what happened to the seas and so on and so forth. Now, what if a scientist would examine the earth and the seas and be able to determine the process that was created, and it didn't comport with this text? Is that checkmate for the text of the Torah? No. The Torah is describing a process, but the process the Torah is describing does not have to be a scientific process. But from this process that the Torah is describing, if we look deeper, we'll draw out lessons. And there is a level of examination of the text that does that. But let's put it this way. What is the plain meaning of the words? Ein hamikra yotze midei pshuto, our rabbis teach us. There's depth and there's depth and there's depth and there's infinite depth. But at the end of the day, ein hamikra yotze midei pshuto means the words have a plain meaning that also must be understood plainly. Does that mean it's a scientific description of what historically occurred? No, but it's the way that God is choosing for us to envision it for reasons. And what those reasons are a different examination. But first, what do the words mean? So the words mean this is a process that occurred with water and with earth, literally. Is it historical? Is it scientific? Irrelevant. Irrelevant. Torah is not a science book. But what do the words mean? So this is what the words mean, okay? The words need to make logical sense on their own terms. In other words, you can't say to me, okay, it says they're in one place, and then it calls it seas, and it's singular, and it's plural, and that's a contradiction. Who cares if it's a contradiction? The Torah is not a science book, so it's allowed to have contradictions. No. The Torah has to make sense on its own terms. It also doesn't need to be scientific, but it needs to make sense on its own terms. So therefore, I may ask the question. It is a valid question to say, what do you mean one place and seas? Is it plural? Is it singular? Which one is it? You can't wave that away. You can't dismiss it and say, oh, it's a mystical book. No, it is a mystical book, but it also has a plain meaning, the sages tell us. Ein hamikra yotze midei pshuto. The text cannot be divorced from its plain meaning. You can't wave away the plain meaning. We have to understand the plain meaning, regardless of science. Okay? Put science away. What do the words mean? And does it make sense? And if not, what am I missing? Okay? That's my response. So the hour is late. I want to make one or two comments and then we'll call it a night. And that is this. God calling names. Why does he need to call names? I don't know what we said before. I'm sure we mentioned it before because we had two other instances of this. But in my preparation for this class, I came across this idea. Maybe I said it before. Maybe I didn't. I want to say it again. God calling it a name means I have a specific purpose for this. It's not just willy-nilly. It's not just, hey, let me see what happens if I do this. Okay? The fact that, it says there was light and he called it day. I have a purpose for this light. It's going to be day. It's going to be a period of activity for mankind. The heavens, I don't remember what we said about it in that class. Whatever we said, we said. But, maybe it's meant for mankind to look up and contemplate the spiritual, right? So it's uses the same term as Shemayim Ba'aretz, which may refer to the spiritual world in that context in the first verse. Well, we're not examining that verse now, so I'm not going to think deeply about it at this moment. But he called the dry land Eretz means that whatever it means, it means. But the point of calling names is this is purposeful. It's not just, and now I have dry land. No, I specifically want it to be in this form, and I'm giving it a name which implies that I have a purpose for this. It didn't just emerge and like, hey, that's cool. No, I'm calling it this. This is what I had in mind. The calling of the name indicates God has an intended purpose with this creation. Maybe we'll talk about what the names mean. And he called the water seas. I think I could say a lot on that, but we don't have a lot of time. Let's talk about what Eretz means. We'll make a comment maybe about seas, and we'll call it a night. Eretz. Eretz is related to the Hebrew word ratzon. Ratzon which comes from the Hebrew ratzah, resh tzadi hey, which means to desire or to want. Ratzon means will or desire. Eretz means a place where God's desires are fulfilled. It is sort of the end point and the objective of God's his will. Everything that God's doing in the cosmos is focusing on this place called Eretz. And the commentators say that in the first verse, Eretz referred to, we said, maybe the physical creation, where Shamayim referred to the spiritual. Or alternatively, Eretz referred to this globule of the earth that had not been formed yet and was not yet suitable for habitation. And Shamayim referred to the cosmos. But the globule of this earth, this amorphous form where ultimately man would inhabit, is called Eretz, because that's the focus of God's purpose and will, is a habitation for earth. And then within this globule of the earth, I have water. And God makes a separation, and the water creates an atmosphere. And above the atmosphere is the waters above. Below it is the waters below. And he puts a divider in the middle. Now that divider means everything above here is not where man's going to live. So I'm not going to call it Eretz anymore. Now it's called Shamayim. Shamayim until now referred to everything outside of this formless blob of earth. I had a formless blob of earth, but it's Eretz because my will and desire is focused there. That's where man is going to live. I separated off the top layer. I took some water, I elevated it up, I made a separation called the Rakia. That's called Shamayim now. Until now, Shamayim was the cosmos and what was beyond it. Sham means there. It's like there. It's over there. It's out there. It's not here. It's not where it's happening. So now that I elevated the atmosphere and the waters above the domicile of man, it's no longer earth. It's no longer Eretz. It's no longer the focus of my will and desire. It's now Shamayim. It's part of there. It's there. Now I have the earth and the water mixed together in the lower realm. I'm separating it, says God. The water goes over here and the habitable land, the Yabasha, goes over there. And now I'm calling that spot Eretz. You see how Eretz becomes more and more limited. At first, it's either the whole physical creation or the globule of the earth. And Shamayim is everything above it. Then I make a Rakia and I elevate the water, and that becomes part of Shamayim, and only what's below it is now Eretz. And now within the Eretz, which is water and land together, I separate the land from the water, and now I have land distinct and water distinct, and now the land is Eretz. Now the land is the focus of my will and desire, because that's where man's going to be. Eretz, Ratzon, desire, will, God's focus and will and desire and purpose is becoming more and more focused on this more and more limited area where man is going to begin to emerge. Okay, I could say more about Eretz, but I said something about Eretz, so I'm gonna leave it there. Yamim. I want to mention Rashi's comment because it connects to a class we said on Sunday, very peripherally, but the question of if it's one, how is it many? If it's one place, how is it Yamim, plural? So we had an answer to that. We said it was one place means the water divided from the land, and then the land emerged, and now the waters are many. It's like stages. Okay. It's referring to two different things, two different processes. But let's look at Rashi's comment. Here. He called it seas. Rashi says, V'halo yam echadu. What do you mean? But it's one sea. Now, on the one hand, that means, it said initially God put all the water in one place. So why is it seas plural? On the other hand, even once the waters are divided, all the waterways on earth are connected. It's not like there's an independent ocean, really, unless you want to talk about a lake. But it's all the water on the earth really is all connected. So what is seas plural? So Rashi says this. He says, Ela ena dometam daga ola min hayam ba'ako, letam daga ola min hayam be'aspamia. Now the people who are in the Sunday class like, aha, aspamia. As Rashi says, the taste of a fish that comes out of the sea in Akko, which is a coastal city in the land of Israel, is different than the taste of a fish which rises from the sea in Aspamia. Who remembers from the Sunday class? What's Aspamia?
Spain.
Spain.
Aspamia is Spain. So Rashi mentions Aspamia. We had Aspamia on Sunday. It's a nice connection. When does the word Aspamia come up? Almost never. And it came up for us in 2 classes in the same week. Remarkable, remarkable, remarkable. But he says, in other words, the idea of seas is even with one connected body of water, different areas in the water have different qualities. You have saltier water and fresher water. You have different species of animals that inhabit. The commentaries talk about different minerals of the different land masses that affect the taste and the quality of the water and the type of life that lives there. You have different rivers that are feeding into the sea at different places that are bringing, minerals or whatever they're bringing from their unique land masses, so that within one great sea, you have many different areas that are distinct from each other, distinguishable from each other. So even the one great sea, as it were, can be described as seas. Okay, so those are some of the resolutions to some of the questions that arise on from a literal reading of this verse. But that's enough said about these 2 verses, and now we'll call it a night. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on the flip side.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
anyone
you.
with lingering
Excellent
questions, email me, rabbi@rabbirafimalt.com. Better if you could message me on WhatsApp. If you don't have my WhatsApp contact, email me and I'll give it to you. WhatsApp is the best way to communicate with me outside of class. Okay, everybody, thank you for coming. Have a great night, and we'll see you, God willing, Sunday or sooner. Sunday for the Ovadia class, or next Tuesday for the Genesis class. And as I mentioned earlier, I want to get rolling again my Noahide Laws series. Maybe we'll be able to do even more with the channel during the summer, because I have time off and I'd really like to put the time in, invest in the channel. So we'll see what comes about between now and the next class. I probably have enough on my plate, but at the very least this summer, we'll get some more learning happening. Okay. Have a great night, a great week, and be well.
You too, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you.